I want to ask you something. What is financial independence? When you hear that word, what pictures come to mind? Often when we're discussing financial topics, we say you have to define it before you can achieve it. So we're going to do that today. We're first going to talk about what is not financial independence, what we feel like it is, and what you need to know. So those are kind of the points we're going to get at today, but I do want to take a minute and just ask, what is financial independence to Mark?
Yeah. So to me, it means not having to worry about money or not having to take out a loan to do something that I'm passionate about or that I want to do.
I think that's amazing. I think we're going to talk a little more in detail about ours, but I was curious for you because, we're at different life stages.
Yeah.
And one of the things we'll talk about later is how it is a little bit relative.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get into the details here. So let's talk about first, what is not financial independence?
Yeah.
I think for many, they feel like if I just had X number of dollars, I'd be set.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We hear quite often people say, if I just had $1 million, right, I can retire. But there's really no math behind that, right?
No.
Like it's just a pretty subjective type of number that people throw out there. I don't know if there was like a marketing campaign at some point about it or what. But
I think some of that might come from a certain person we know who talks about a lot of debt and getting out of debt and independence. But
yeah.
I think the key here is it falls into the same trap we've seen a lot with retirement, which is it's not an asset problem, it's an income problem. So when people are working towards that goal, they're thinking, well, if I get this level of assets, I'll be good to go, which isn't accurate.
Yeah.
So it's not focusing on the right thing, in my opinion.
It's not. And it also, when you're starting out, especially, it can be completely just way off in the distance, seem completely unattainable. And I mean, especially when you're talking to, a 20-year-old that might only have $50 to spare, if that, I mean, per month, then it can just seem like I'm not really going to get there. Right. So
why try?
Exactly.
Why focus on it?
Right. Yeah. You just lose motivation at that point. It's like you said, it's not an amount of money problem. It's an income problem.
Another thing it's not is having a high rate of return on an investment, right? There's not some magical investment that we're hiding in our back pockets that we use regularly that we don't tell people about.
Yeah. Even though sometimes it seems like we get almost like cornered into letting that secret out or something. It's like, okay, if you just keep us long enough, we'll finally just cave. No, it's not, there's no magic bullet.
And paying for that subscription to get that information from that guy who knows better, right? There's a lot of those people out there right now too.
Oh yeah.
But the market swings both ways. So you can't leave everything to chance. You've got to have a plan in place that works both ways for you.
Yeah, and exactly, because when we look at the market, right, in the long term, and right now what we're talking about is a long-term investment strategy, right, and achieving financial independence in that long term, then the market does give us a pretty good tool to achieve that, right? All we have to do is be consistent with it and be diligent about our part in that. So it's not really, you don't have to try super hard to get a rate of return that is more than capable of getting you to financial independence.
Yes. And then the last thing we're going to say is it is not hoping everything works out. Hope is not a plan.
No.
And I think a lot of people kind of stick their heads in the sand and they want to not think about it and just kind of hope it magically appears. Yeah. It's just not going to happen.
Not going to happen. We talked during our last episode about retirement plans for business owners. And we're like, okay, would you prefer the retirement that you choose or the one that is chosen for you? Right.
Yes.
And that's kind of hoping for that things turn out well is basically accepting whatever retirement is given to you.
And I think, the idea of this to me is very similar to if I decided I'm going to go on a trip and I want to get to a very specific destination, we'll just pick, the beach. I'm going to Orange Beach.
No.
I can't just generally head south and make my destination.
Right.
I might get close, but I may find a beach, but it's not going to be where I meant to go. I have to get a map and I have to make sure that I'm making steps to get there. And I think that's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
And then part of that too is taking a sobering look at your financial habits and being critical of yourself for just a moment so that you can make progress. If you're doing something that is hurting yourself, but you never take the time to really look at yourself and decide that you're doing that, then you're never going to change the behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I was listening to a Dave Ramsey video yesterday, and one of the things that he talked about was, you can't reap what you don't sow.
Well, that's a good one. I know
Yeah.
people say you reap what you sow, but I've never kind of heard it flipped around like that.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. And for context of this, I'm kind of going to go a different direction because he says, if you don't sow anything, you won't reap anything. And I'm like, well, I don't know, because April showers have come and I didn't sow anything, but I still got a bunch of weeds. Right?
Right.
So even if you don't sow anything, you still have to do quite a bit of work to keep all the bad things out.
That's a good one there, because I think a lot of times if we're mindless about our finances, we get a lot of weeds financially.
Oh, yeah.
So that's absolutely true. So we've talked about what is not financial independence, but let's take a minute to talk about what we feel like financial independence is. And generally speaking, we're going to say financial independence is freedom.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to ask you about that, because I saw that you kind of, you typed that in the notes. So freedom. And whenever, I think about that, I think it's, getting to choose how you spend your time and your money.
Yes.
Right? And that's freedom, at least the way that I picture it in retirement.
And when you're thinking about financial independence and your goals, you've got to do a little bit of dreaming. Like, what if that dream vacation really was reachable? What if you had time to pursue volunteer opportunities that you're passionate about? We all, I think, sometimes suffer from this. It is what it is. I'm just going to go through the motions. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to come home. It's going to be the same thing tomorrow. And we don't take time to prioritize and ask ourselves what really matters. And so that's part of what I'm looking for here in financial freedom is I want the freedom to dictate my own time spend.
Yes.
And even if I'm not there yet, I can still make choices today that are going to set me up for that. I can choose not to eat out today because I know that I've got something going on this weekend with my kiddos that I need to have some extra money for. That even the small things add up, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, of course. And to me, it's always very interesting whenever I sit down, with somebody and start on this retirement planning process. And I ask him, what are your plans for retirement? Like, what would you like to do in retirement? And a lot of the times it's a kind of a blank stare and they're just kind of thinking about, well, might want to go see the kids, and this kind of thing. But usually it's not a very detailed, plan. And so it's kind of some work to get to that point where they figure out, okay, no, this is what I'd like to do. And I think a lot of times it's because, there is that familiarity with that 9 to 5. And it's hard to get out of the space of, if I've got freedom from my job, meaning that I don't have to work for money anymore, then what does that free me up to do?
And I think for some, they're just hoping to survive in retirement. Like they don't see beyond just I know I'm not going to be able to work forever. And so we give them the opportunity to start dreaming. Yeah. Another thing that financial independence gives is freedom from money worries.
True.
And this one touches my heart. I'm not going to lie. I've got lots of kiddos. We've all talked about this a few times.
Yeah.
And I've got 4 that are playing competitive sports. I don't want to worry that the cost of that trip that we have to go on is going to affect us negatively long term. That for me is one of the signs of financial independence for me, is that we're making choices that allow us to make these other trips a priority without it hurting our financial picture.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great example because, what we talk a lot about is obviously planning. And we've talked a lot about how, the best trips that you take and that where you feel the most free is when you plan, those trips, right? So in the same way with retirement, right? I can only imagine that somebody that goes into retirement having already set up a plan and that lets them know, hey, it's okay for you to do all of these things and enjoy them. That is so much more freeing than the guy that is just hoping that he's got enough money to do the things that he wants to do in retirement.
And imagine knowing you're going to have another paycheck come before you run out of money.
Yeah.
Because we've got so many people that live paycheck to paycheck. And if you could break that cycle and get yourself to a place where you don't have to worry, is the check coming here? Because, the pay stub's supposed to hit on the weekend. So am I going to get it Friday? Because I really need it on Friday. Right. Yeah. If you didn't have that, imagine the freedom. Or if you have a year like I did last year where everything that can break did break.
Yeah.
And I had the savings to take care of it. I didn't have to go into debt to fix my fridge.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things just take so much weight off of you. And I think a lot of people don't realize, A, that it's attainable, and B, that they can do it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is financial independence is freedom from a paycheck when you retire.
Yeah.
Not having to give up your 9 to 5 or whatever hours you're keeping. Some people, their hours are even worse than that.
Yeah. What some of our colleagues here call it is that you're no longer working because you have to, you're working because you want to.
Yes. And we have a lot of people that say, well, I don't care to retire. That's not my priority. That's okay. Again, statistics would say you may end up having that happen whether you want to or not. So better to be prepared. But if you choose to work in retirement, okay. I just think there's a mindset shift that I've seen in my clients that continue working part-time or doing something they love. It's not like they have to go to work. They just get to.
They get to. That's right. And so we've talked about what it's not. We've talked about what it is. And so I want to make sure that we tell people about kind of what they need to know.
Yes. And I think the first thing is you're not going to accidentally reach financial independence. You're not going to wake up one day shocked that you've arrived in anything. I mean, if we're just being honest, any goal, but certainly not here. And the chances of you winning the lottery are going to be pretty low. That'd be the only way you could boom, you're rich. Especially if you're like me and you just don't buy a ticket. Chances of you winning are pretty low.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, there are people out there that do win the lottery, right? But if you don't even buy a ticket, it's kind of like...
Might want to take some other steps.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is financial independence is relative. You shared at the beginning, for you, the ability to take trips, we've talked about your concert addiction, the ability to do those things, right? Yeah. That's important to you.
Yes.
For me, the ability to cover my kids' expenses without worrying. When I became a single mom, one of my big goals was to get to a point where child support was not necessary, but was extra. It's not there yet, I'll be honest, but have been getting closer every year. Good. Because I wanted to get to a point where I was independent. Now I'm remarried now, so it's not as big of a goal, but I wanted to be independent myself.
Yeah.
So that was not something that weighed on me.
Yeah. And I mean, that's huge because you just said it, you wanted to be independent, right?
Yes.
And not have to depend on those extra payments to make ends meet.
Yes.
And what I find is that kind of like that goal changed for you from, then to now, that's what we see a lot is that, everybody's goals change with time.
Yes. And we hope that regardless of what stage of life you're in, you're focusing on retirement. Because that's one that nobody's really going to be able to avoid. And there aren't any sort of, aid programs to help you once you're there. So we want to make sure that you're on track for that. The other thing too is that financial independence is based on what you value most. A fulfilling retirement hopefully is on your list. It's certainly on ours. But even that goal could look different. We joke a lot with people that some people want to go to Paris, Arkansas. Some people want to go to Paris, France. Those retirements look very, very different.
Yeah. Some people just want to be debt free.
So we've got to make sure that your goals are based purely on who you are and what you value.
Yes.
And then last and most important is it is truly achievable.
It is.
I wish more people understood that. I know that it feels nebulous, but once you really define what it is, you can take steps and make progress very efficiently.
And if you don't believe it, I mean, look at us, right? Like, I don't think either one of us, would have ever thought that, kind of we're in the place that we're in now.
Yes.
But because of just the simple steps that you can take every day to get there, right? It's a result of planning and putting that plan into action, that we are even here.
Yes. And the key is, having a financial advisor can really help you define those goals and define what steps you need to take. But we can't want it more than you do. You've got to want it for yourself. So you've got to be willing to do the hard work. It's not unachievable, but it is hard earned.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember being a broke college grad that was, not even making enough money to make ends meet at the beginning. I was in all kinds of student loans and credit card debt. And I remember that was my first big goal out of college was, okay, how am I going to pay my credit cards off? And just working hard at it, budgeting, that was a really, really big lesson in budgeting at that point, but I was able to achieve it. And it feels so good now.
A lot younger than most would, by the way. So good work for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
So it's time for our 2 cents. I'll let you go first.
Yeah. So financial independence is the ability to live life on your own terms. And you yourself, right? it feels kind of strange to say, but you deserve it, right? Like you deserve to live without, the constant fear and worry that a lot of people do whenever they live paycheck to paycheck. So what steps are you going to take towards your financial independence? I know yesterday, one of the questions during this conference I was in was, okay, what's one step that you're going to take towards your financial independence this week? Right. Mm-hmm. And I realized I haven't made that 1% increase to my retirement accounts this year. So I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to do this week. So what's something that you could do this week towards your financial independence?
And I would say every journey that's worth pursuing starts with one step. So maybe you're thinking financial independence just doesn't feel tangible. That's okay. Mm-hmm. Start with one positive step today and then another. I read a book a while back that just talked about like the little things that add up over time. So as you mentioned, what's 1%? Really, if you were to increase your contribution to your employer plan by 1%, it's not going to make a huge difference in your budget. But if you do it every year that you work, that adds up. So make progress, even if it's small, and just keep going. Yeah. We thank you guys so much for joining us today on Talking Sense. We hope you've learned something that you can apply towards your goal of financial independence. We'll catch up with you again next week. Thanks for listening to the Talking Sense podcast. And if you like what you hear, make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes.
The GenWealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526.
And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success.
GenWealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.